Samantha Yap, founder of Yap Global. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with your pinned tweet, which is quite reflective of the journey that you've taken during your time as the founder of Yap Global, going back to 2018 when you first founded Yap. Um, First of all, what led you to reflect and write this tweet?
Yes, so you're referring to a tweet that I've titled, Building a Generation of Web3 Comms Professionals. Um,
Yes.
and, and yeah, I think so. Just to take it back, I am the founder of a crypto native PR agency. We focus on helping people tell their stories and build trust in the crypto space. I have been doing this as we speak for 8 years now, and I've grown a team. And because we can't do this without people, I run a services business, and my team has grown, right? And with any organization, people come and go. You can't have someone stay for as long as 8 years. I mean, you can if if you're building a different project, but like usually after like say 3 to 4 years, people kind of want to like grow and progress and try something new. So the threat it kind of reflected on it because so many people have shaped where Yap Global is today, and I'm actually quite pleased and proud to see that many of the people that I've worked with and have worked at Yap are now going on to continue to help projects and teams tell their stories, and they're doing it in um, these crypto web3 organizations. And so it's kind of like, yeah, there's like an alumni of Yappers. It's quite, you know, ironic that we're Yap Global, a PR agency, and then yapping has become this term that everyone likes to use. But I mean, yeah, I'm very proud to see that there are Yappers like in all um, areas of the industry. And it's actually quite nice because some of them go into in-house comms roles, and we still work with them today. So it's not like when
Yeah.
they leave Yap, it's like we say goodbye. It's like, hey, we get to work together and collaborate on another project, and just in a different, yeah, format.
I I kind of jumped in directly to the tweet, but I really should have started out with kind of the tagline of Yap Global. It's we tell stories, we build trust. And and want to hear from you on, how you help build, create stories or tell stories from these crypto projects that are clients. Um, but I think what's really special about your tweet thread is that you're telling your story and you're almost um, kind of a what is it called? It's you're demonstrating kind of what you do as a service organization for other clients, but you're doing it on behalf of yourself. You're telling your story of like you're taking someone through the journey of like how you guys started 8 years ago and all the challenges that you've faced since then, the successes, the challenges, and I'd encourage anyone to go to your Twitter and then read your thread because it's pretty cool. I think there's a lot of really neat, really good lessons in there, which I want to get to in this on this during our conversation. So tell us about Yap Global. You guys are a service organization, public relations agency. You help Web3 projects, crypto projects tell their stories, and you build trust, is the tagline. Tell us how you do that.
Yeah. So I mean, going to the term, the tagline, and the second part of it, which is build trust. I entered the crypto industry in 2017, and it was fairly new still, um, and and it and every time the crypto industry grows and hits an all-time high, there's more of a growing interest for it, and then every time it kind of has a dip, there's a lot of negativity, negative stigma around it, skepticism in the media about it. So trust is something that's really was really hard to gain and build in crypto because everyone was kind of on their guard whenever you interacted or talked to any crypto industry. And so, you know, I used to be a journalist, so that's my background, and that's kind of how this PR agency came about. But really, the heart behind Yap Global was I just saw a need to help these really bright minds and intelligent founders tell their stories and build trust, because stories is what will, as you mentioned, take people on a journey, and that builds more credibility and trust. Because if you are just, say pitching a story and you're just this new brand name that they've never really heard about, it's really easy for people to be on guard and be like, who are you, where did you come from? So I think telling stories is how we've done it. Now we've also done, like, we've done it mainly with media, because and I think still today, I know that the media being put in and being scrutinized of how trustworthy the media are, because X is rising as a platform for people to just go direct and communicate what they do. But still, when our maybe our parents or our aunties and uncles like want to get information and know what's happening with news, what do? They read the news. They get their source is media publications, right? This could be like, just mainstream wise, the BBC or, the New York Times. That's kind of where people go to get like the up to date news. It's the same thing with crypto. It's like there's the crypto trade publications like the CoinDesk and The Block and Blockworks that have editorial guidelines that people trust. So when you see, Blockworks go out with an article about, a new fundraise or a new product, like, and can trust that a journalist has done their job, their due diligence to write the story. And so we kind of operate in that. We do a lot of media relations. So and a lot of the work we don't do pay for play, so a lot of the placements or the media coverage that we secure for clients, it's really earned. But to earn that requires work and requires that trust building, but also requires like good um one, storytelling, but also like added value. I mean, it has to be a newsworthy value for them to write about it. So yeah, I hope that explains
Storytelling
it.
is one of those really, really underappreciated but super, super important skills, really in any field. But I think especially in crypto, when you're working with a highly technical founder that has an idea of like the problem that they're trying to solve and they have a solution, but it's highly technical. How do you work with founders to create a story that is relatable, maybe down to earth, that non-technical people can understand? What does that process look like in working with the technical founder in creating a story?
Yeah, it really starts with one, making them quite comfortable to tell their story, because yeah, sometimes the technical founders just want to talk about the tech and want to talk about the product and what they're building. So actually, when we start working with any project or founder, is we like to do a 1 hour workshop, and really we just ask them questions, but like different questions, and then we kind of hear how they respond. And yeah, sometimes it actually gets quite personal. It's like, oh, what? Why did you want to start this in the first place? What's your vision? What's your mission? So it's like kind of getting to the heart of like why they're building what they're doing. Because yeah, of course, the projects and the founders that we work with, we believe and trust, and because we also do our due diligence when we pick our clients. We're not just going to represent anyone who comes across our contact form. We want to also believe in what they're doing. So we usually already see, you know, the vision and the mission behind the project, and then we just get to know the founder a little bit more. So we start there, we do the workshop, and then yeah, pretty much we're a team of like that formulate stories. We write so many stories a day. We brainstorm, we get creative, and we're like, sometimes it's like that off comment that they've made, and we're like, wait, that's the story, that would make a really good feature story, or that would make a really good profile piece. So it kind of takes a team to brainstorm and workshop that.
The finding that statement that they say that might be offhand, and not part of the main thing that they were talking about. Like, it takes a lot of experience, and it takes really ears to hear that and to be able to recognize that. What in your life has helped you recognize those snippets that are maybe said under their breath or offhand that can become like part of the center stage in their story?
Yeah, so I studied journalism at university, and my first job was as a journalist at a national broadcaster in Singapore. And so that was my job. I was a journalist. And so my job was to actually go out and interview people and get as much information to tell compelling stories. Um, I was very fortunate to be trained by, quite like old school but great editors. And it was quite like intense because if you go in and you interview someone and then you come back and you don't have like all the information, or you didn't ask them the main questions, like then that's kind of a like a bad mark on your work. And always ask them like, okay, what does my editor want me to like need me to get out of this interview? So I always kind of think about how to like cover what I have. Like if I have a 15-minute interview with someone, I just try to gather as much information. So I think it's training. I was a trained journalist, and so that's actually helped me become a better PR person, and that's kind of also brought value to where Yap is today because of the way I was trained as a journalist to find a good story. And also like my mandate and mission as a journalist is to tell good stories. I mean, most journalists, like, why do they do what they do? Like they need to write good stories because of course one need to impress the editor, but also like people do it for like the like clicks and likes too. I mean, that's kind of um what they're doing it for, but also to like get the inside scoop, get the most current, tell the most compelling story. So that was kind of my mission. So then I think I got sharp and good at doing that, and that's how I just flip it when it comes to like helping founders with their stories.
Learning to ask good questions, like good, insightful questions that really elicit amazing answers from your the person you're interviewing takes a lot of time and skill. Um, and your time as a journalist sounds like that's what helped you be successful in your work in the crypto space. When you interview and spend time with founders, what types of questions do you ask that help them kind of get out of their comfort zone and helps you as the PR agency kind of discover those stories on their behalf?
Yeah, actually some of this happens, off of Zoom, and sometimes it's like meeting them at the conferences, having sitting with them next to dinner, and that's why I think, we share that we met over dinner because we like to kind of bring our clients to dinner at conferences and get to know them more personally. Really, it like sometimes is more of a hey, what do you enjoy doing like when you're not building your project? And it's just like learning kind of their um getting their personal life, getting to know a bit more about their personal life, what their hobbies are. But at the same time, it's just some questions is like what made you like where did you get the idea from? What made you do what you're doing, or why are you doing what you're doing? Like a lot of this is quite like actually straightforward. It's a lot of soul searching existential questions, like because these founders, they're spending their days and their life, their project is their life, right? For many, this is their especially entrepreneurs, they just dedicate their whole days to their work. So there has to be something there that makes them tick and that makes them keep going, because if there isn't, then they wouldn't be around, right? Everyone has like something in them, like everyone that's building and like also just weathering the crypto highs and lows. Like the crypto industry is not easy. Like even for me personally, it's like, since joining in 2017, I think what we've been through 3 bear markets. We also weathered like the FTX collapse. Remember the Terra Luna? Like it's a really tough market to be in, highly volatile. So for some of our founders who are still believing in what they're doing and still standing strong after all of that. Like there has to be something fundamental and like a deeper yeah, like purpose of why they're doing what they're doing. Because otherwise, I mean, this industry, as I said, is not easy to be in.
Yeah. And getting to that deeper kind of like the mission and the vision and the deeper sense of like why the founder is doing what they're doing could potentially take many sessions. Have you had situations where you've worked with founders and maybe they don't quite see the purpose of, Samantha, why are you asking me these questions? And why are we meeting 3 times when, I need you guys to do this thing now? Have you had situations like that where they're maybe impatient and not quite willing to work with you?
Yes, all the time. So actually, we don't
Tell
get
us
three
about that.
sessions with them. We don't get 3 sessions with them because we only get that like at the start we get like their commitment maybe for like a 1 hour or 2 hour session. But we pretty much like have to like get to know them like on our weekly calls and then again meeting at conferences. So yes, the challenge that we face is that there are, we're in the crypto space, so we deal with like developer types, and to them they just push for output, and they're quite like I'm not gonna say they're rigid, but they're very much like A plus B equals C, and like this is it, this is the output, so this should happen, right? Like they're like they program, they code, they write code, and like it's easy to write code and design an output, but like in crypto, I'm sorry, in PR, it's you can't guarantee the output. Like I can't guarantee that like Coindesk is going to write your story, but we have to make sure we have a compelling pitch and a compelling angle for them to write your story. So we deal with this challenge all the time. So yeah, I mean, my answer to you is we don't get this time, but it's over time. So I would say I'm quite proud that we have built and developed relationships with our clients, and some of them have stayed with us. I have like clients that have been with us for 3 years, which is actually like sometimes longer than the tenure of some of our staff. So it's like our clients are quite loyal to Yap Global, which I'm very grateful for. And so we kind
No,
of
that's
know
and
them.
that's
I think
a
over time we know them. Like after three
and that's a
years, it's kind of like,
testament.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a testament to the value that Yap Global provides. Now, there's been a lot of, in crypto, a lot of talk around like narratives and stories in general. Maybe we could back up a little bit and focus a little bit on kind of some definitions. Like, what is a narrative? So, if you were speaking to a potential client and then you were sharing with them, maybe they asked you, like, what is a narrative? What is a story? Like, why is that important to us as a crypto project? How would you respond?
Yeah, I would say a narrative is like a trend that has um grown into a bigger um like story. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, because trends fade. So trends could be like a term that, like, I like how, for example, zero knowledge technology becomes this like trend and buzzword every like it's come back. It's like back then in the early days, it was about like privacy coins and zero knowledge proofs for that. Then then it was like quiet on that. And then later on, like zero knowledge tech came back up for infrastructure, and then like kind of went quiet. And now it's kind of come back up for like roll ups and like scalability and so it's like this. So that's like it's like that's a trending thing, but a narrative is like a broader story or like um that kind of like has taken on more of like legs. That's what we like to say in PR. So say maybe the narrative of at the time we're speaking, which is like not great, but like that Ethereum is not united or and then like that's kind of grown into like more negative sentiments around it. And so but that like that's kind of lasting for say longer than like 6 months. So, I mean, that's how I would describe a narrative. But then, yeah, but narratives are like like trends come and go. Narratives are sometimes storylines that like stay for a while. Like this is really hard to define, but I
Yeah.
hope you get the gist.
No, I think the Ethereum Foundation example is a good one. Um, and and I want to kind of double click into that because that is kind of, there comes a point where there's narrative and then it creates a public perception, and then the public perception becomes like the story that people have in their minds when they think of the Ethereum Foundation. And so the example that you gave, that currently the idea is that, it's not united, they're kind of fragmented, they're kind of, doing a bunch of things kind of separate from each other, things are disjointed. That's kind of it feels to me that's the narrative right now. Now the foundation is doing a bunch of things to change that. But if you were to counsel them and advise them on like what else needs to happen from a PR perspective, because PR can break and or create, really amazing organizations, right? You could really make or break organizations. And I feel like the Ethereum Foundation is kind of on the precipice of like they could turn things around and or things could continue sliding. And PR feels like one of the key ingredients that kind of they need. And I don't know if they're a client of yours or if you can speak on their behalf, but would be curious to, if they were listening, like what kind of advice would you give them?
So they're not a client of ours, and I kind of have like I know. So okay, I've seen this is more of a general comment, but I've seen there's this no PR tactic or no marketing tactic that the crypto industry loves. So it's like we're not gonna say anything because we want to be like transparent, and we don't want to have a stance because we want to be neutral. But by doing that, then like the narrative like takes yeah, basically goes beyond them, and like they don't have control of it. So I think it's by choice that they're not really saying anything and like not really listening or doing anything about it, because I think they kind of want to be neutral. And this is not just on Ethereum Foundation. I have seen many projects that are like, no, we're not going to say anything about this because we want to be neutral. But that's actually not the way to go, because if you really want to shape and actually build a, you know, positive ecosystem, and you actually want to achieve what, you set out to achieve, like, I mean, the Ethereum white paper has set out a mission, and wants projects to adopt what it's building, and or build on the technology. Like, everyone has a mission. Like, why do things exist, right? Like, now if I think about it, okay, now I'm like thinking about like Bitcoin, like, because Bitcoin doesn't really have any like spokespeople, but that's why people joke like Bitcoin's like a meme of itself. But like there's people behind the Ethereum Foundation, right? So yeah, I guess my message to them is like, you not controlling the narrative is you letting you're letting the misinformation and misunderstanding of what you guys doing like get away. So like you're letting it happen. So you should take control of that. I mean, that's what we advise across the board. Now, we've worked with quite impressive large organizations that have like great PR comm setup, like very organized. We're like, some of them were just one agency in like a global, network of agencies. So yeah, that's kind of how large corporations do it. And I think we should learn from that.
Yeah, and I think the phrase that I've heard that I agree with is, if you don't tell your story, then other people are going to tell it for you. And I think that maxim is true. No matter what size organization you are, like you need to own your story and tell your own story. Otherwise, like everyone will make up their own story and say that about you, and one of those could become the dominant story, which may not be true. Um, and I think this is especially true for crypto with the whole like credible neutrality thing. Like at the end of the day, each of these projects is their own project, has their own story, and they need to tell their story. And foundations are no different. Tell us if you were speaking with, crypto projects, and they don't quite see the importance of public relations or communications, what kind of, I guess, education and, I guess, what can you tell them? Now, keep in mind, a lot of these projects are technical founders, and it's not that they don't see the value, it's just maybe they don't know yet. And so what kind of things can you tell them so that they see the value of, proper communications, whether it's, narrative storytelling and or crisis management, damage control, anything like that? What can you tell them?
Yeah, it's very like cliche line, but like people like to say, "Oh, build the tech and they will come," but actually, it's actually quite noisy out there. There's a lot of tech being built, so you actually, if you want people to use your technology and have you trust what you're building, and actually, firstly, understand what you're building, communications is very important. Communications is also educational, so don't just see it as like, and it's not all just like self-shilling and like, because I know everyone's like, oh, I don't want to come across too shilly, but it's really education, and and like, I mean, everyone should just stop and think about like how much information they can absorb a day. There's a limit, and you can't absorb everything in a day. So how do you ensure that the developers that you want to reach are spending not even an hour, but like spending 15 minutes reading your like recent blog or recent paper about what you're building? Hey, I'm so sorry. I was talking about, yeah, so how it's very noisy out there, and so like communications is actually education. So it's actually informing people about what you're doing, and really, you're lucky that people would spend 15 minutes reading your paper. I mean, there's so much information out there and available. So yeah, I think the getting people's attention is like gold. And so proper strategic communications is the best way to do that.
Let's talk about the noise for a minute, because I think that's a pretty serious problem in crypto. There's so many voices, and it's happening primarily on Twitter. And so I think we have a couple of problems where we've created for ourselves an echo chamber where it's mainly just one channel. But there's so many other channels that I think have a lot of potential that we haven't explored yet. And so I want to hear, your thoughts on other channels of distribution and like what has worked for clients of yours. Um, and getting through the noise, like what are some strategies you've helped projects with to get through the noise? Because there's a lot of noise, especially with Kaido and now Cookie, and it's just so noisy out there.
I think by the nature of us being a PR agency, we're already helping filter out the noise because there's only a handful. I'm not going to say just handful, but like there's only one Bloomberg. There's only one CoinDesk. And then within each, of those media publications, there's only a handful of journalists that all have different beats and that cover different things. So actually to get the attention of a reporter is actually the value that we bring, and is actually why clients stay with us, right? Because if you say go to an event, and there's what, like 100 speakers on stage, and how do you ensure and get a journalist to talk to your client? That's kind of what we specialize in. So in terms of cutting through the noise, PR actually does that, because there are like thousands of tokens and projects, but like Bloomberg's only gonna write like, you know, 2 to 3 industry crypto stories a day. Not even, because they have a lot other to cover as well. So really, it's the media, and how do you get their attention? And it's actually it's a traditional method. I mean, PR has been around for years, so we're like a traditional firm just servicing a Web3 industry. So really, it's that, because X is also quite noisy. As you said, with Kaito Cookie as well, there's this whole competition about how to earn gaps or snaps, and I don't really even know. Like, people can try what they want, but but what I can know that we can really hone in on, and like it's our craft, is to tell a good news story that's good enough to like land in the paper or land on, CNBC TV. So that's how we do it, and how I recommend doing it, because actually comms is still very important.
Yeah. With more and more projects looking at working with, influencers or KOLs, how does that strategy align with the PR strategy? And can they work together? And how, from a Yap's perspective, how do you work with projects that may want to also work with influencers?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. We don't do any like KOL pitching or KOL management, just purely because they're operating in a different um I mean, it's hard. It's all subjective, and every KOL is different, and they have a different niche. Um we very much, with PR, we really respect journalistic integrity and the ethical guidelines when it comes to just proper journalism. And so that's how we operate, right? But like, if we were to pitch a story to, say, a KOL, they have different ways of defining what is a good story and what's not. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't pitch to, like, say, podcasts like yourself, Peter, and like Block by Block, because I think podcasts, though, do also still have a filtering tool, right? Like with you want to talk to, um, yeah, guests of a caliber, a level of importance. So we would not bring, like, a project that we don't think is worthy of being on your show. And so it's still working within the, like, framework of like what good journalism is, and what yeah institutes a good story and news values. So yeah, to answer your question in short, um we don't do KOL management. It's a bit vague as well. Then also it gets kind of a little bit gray area, because like, are you paying for someone to just write a tweet? Then that's kind of like pay for play, and that's kind of very influencer tactic kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is, it could work, but then it doesn't really feel very genuine if someone is being paid to tweet about you. So yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me. And I like the journalistic integrity, which again comes from your background. You bring that to the foreground. And that's important, especially for projects as they're considering working with agencies like Yap, that you guys approach things, from the perspective of, high integrity and in service of them, in service of their project. Um, some projects, however, may want to work with KOLs on their own and also with, a PR agency. And so in situations like that, where, they're going to do what the project will do what they want. Um, and I'm just curious how you would, is there a way where both could work, but you don't have any control over the KOL stuff? That's up to the project and the founder. But if they choose to, because that's just kind of an audience they want to reach, whereas you may be reaching a different audience that's kind of more, um, uh, that requires high trust, versus kind of the audience of, maybe it's just a different audience, I guess. I guess, how do you work in situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, we do work with that, and I mean, because we don't, that's not our remit. But then if they want to engage with KOLs, we do. All we just do is we basically align on strategy, and actually, it's good to kind of complement the
Mm,
strategy, right? So if it's so like say if there's a big mainnet launch or a big announcement, just make sure we're aligning it. So before it kind of goes out on like socials or their official channels, we'll make sure that we give journalists first, you know, insight, even maybe exclusivity. So basically, we make sure, like, we just work with marketing managers to ensure that, like, the marketing campaign doesn't tamper our, um, organic journalistic PR efforts.
I see. So maybe let's start there, like the PR process. And so again, if you're speaking, if there's projects that are listening and they've never worked with Yap or a PR agency, like help them to understand like what it's like to work with a PR agency and like what's in it for them.
Yeah. So with it, so see, you should see an agency as an extension of, so you should see a PR agency as an extension of your comms team. Now, with projects that might already have a marketing manager or a comms manager, great. But that person is going to focus more on the actual like messaging and content of your company. But they're not going to be um I mean they may be very savvy and very resourceful, but like they're not going to have like a master media list. And if they do, they're not going to have time to go and pitch and have conversations and talk to journalists externally. So it's like we are like kind of the external communications arm of the way we operate, right? We talk to and pitch to journalists daily. So we have a good grasp of an understanding of like where a reporter is, what event they're going to, what they're going to cover, what they're interested in. And so when a client is like trying to gear up or aim to launch a major story, we kind of know who to go after and who to spend time with to ensure that it kind of goes out the day you launch. If that makes sense. So basically, we're like external journalist media relations. That's one part. But also we look externally because basically we work with several different clients. So we kind of have also a broader like grasp of what's happening in the industry. And we might actually see like partnerships that our clients might not even see. I think we've like over the years, I can't point to an example, but we basically connected some clients with one another, and they ended up doing a joint PR. So like they ended up having a good partnership just because of our connection, right? So we are kind of like, and it's a fun job. I mean, I love what I do because like I kind of get to like learn and get an inside look on like a broad range of projects. We have like a DeFi lender to a um like a zero knowledge infrastructure marketplace. Like I get to learn about the different like just different projects, and like it makes my team and crypto PR folks quite well-rounded PR crypto experts actually.
So it sounds like because of the relationships that you've built with these news outlets and media folks, you kind of know what their beat is or what they're focused on. And so you're able to tailor the story to meet their needs. And they pay attention to you and they work with you because you're actually solving one of their problems because they're looking for good stories.
Yep.
And then you provide those good stories to them, and then hopefully the project will benefit.
Yeah.
Um,
And just what they're also looking for access to
and access.
key founders, right? And like that's why we also are very selective with who we work with, because like we usually will see, okay, is the client that we work with, are they like pitchable? And like are they, someone that a client really wants to talk about? And like so also like we also start working with projects that are kind of trending. Like again, I'm going to use the zero knowledge tech because I remember like 2 years ago, it's like ZK tech was all the craze, and so we actually had a lot of zero knowledge tech clients. We had like 3 to 4 at one time, and it was like great. And then like the last year happened, and like ZK days and ZK tech just kind of like tapered off, and it's like, okay, what happened? And so it was like much harder to PR them. So really the trends like do come and go, but also we like leverage the trends at the time that they like are hyped up.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I've worked with a number of zero knowledge projects, and you're exactly right. I mean, the story, first started out around privacy and then scalability, and then now everything can be proved through ZK. And it actually, for me right now, feels like ZK feels like the right time. Like there's
Yeah,
actually,
it's back again.
it's back again, and it
But like
actually
for
feels like
real now.
it's really
Yeah.
working. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite exciting, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I interviewed Succinct, Uma at Succinct, and also Rika
Oh,
from Risk Zero. And I've
yes.
interviewed probably 6 or 7 different ZK projects in the last 2 months, and they're all approaching ZK from their own perspective, and trying to solve really the same kind of problem, but from a different perspective. And it feels like maybe now's the right time. Anyway, that's just kind of an aside, since you brought up that ZK as one of the trends over the last few years, and it actually feels like maybe now is the time. Um, how do you manage expectations with projects? I imagine some of them will come to you and say, Sam, I've got this, we have this really great solution to a big problem, but no one knows about us. Like, help us like become famous, help us with awareness. And I want it done yesterday.
Yep, we get that a lot too. Which is why we pick our clients, right? Like the client that wants to get on Bloomberg TV in 2 weeks, we're like, no, not a chance. And we often actually don't work with them because we're like, it just seems so unrealistic. So we always actually like before we even like say yes to working with a client, like it's interesting. We're a services business, like we are meant to serve the client, but we have to be selective too because it's our reputation on the line. So for the project that are like, yeah, could we get on like sometimes projects go, can we get on Wall Street Journal and Financial Times? And I'm like, why do you want to get on there if they're going to be negative and they're going to write a negative piece? Because actually, Wall Street Journal's been writing investigative pieces about crypto, for the past few years. So it's like, do you want to be investigated? Like, why? So sometimes, like, some of their questions are a little bit off. And so, yeah, we kind of have to, like, humble some of them, whether they want to be or not. But, like, we really explain why they should have like they should aim for something and why they shouldn't. But we also share examples of how like long it could take. Really, PR is a relationship game. It's a long game. So like if a journalist doesn't really even know your brand or understand who you are, like they're likely not going to write about you and your project in the next month. However, if you start showing up, they start seeing you like consistently like show up at different events or like say more stories kind of pop up on their news feed about who you are in 6 months, then they might be interested in that exclusive interview or that like executive profile. But like you kind of also have to like we always talk about like building your like digital like presence and footprint, and also like building a steady drumbeat of media coverage.
As you're thinking about projects to work with, I imagine they're all at all different stages. Some are ready to work with Yap. Um, I guess at what stage are projects like ready to work with Yap versus maybe you're too early? Like,
Yeah.
how would you advise projects on that?
Yeah. So my recommendation is because we also don't want to waste anyone's money and also waste anyone's time. But like really, if you've got like we'd say just before a Series A, like you have got a good amount of funding, you can afford to spend on marketing and PR services. Like that's a good time before your Series A. Then we work on your Series A announcement. The other thing is also now I recommend. So we still work with a range of projects. So some there are founders who are like, I just need a team right now for the next 3 months to help me. And we do work with that, but then eventually the founders always get too busy and like there's a lot going on for them. So we really also recommend that I like to recommend that teams should hire a marketing manager first. It's better to hire a marketing manager that can own an agency relationship. So yeah, Series A, and you have a marketing manager or like a comms manager in house that can manage it and get the most out of an agency. Because while we love talking to founders, and it's my favorite part, we know that founders have a million other things to worry about, and they should not be worrying about like PR. We will do the best we can to like elevate and like organize interviews for them, and we just need their like brain maybe for 15 minutes a week, but other than that, like they need to have someone support them with all the other administrative stuff.
That makes sense. The Let's go to a couple of rapid fire questions, if that's okay. Thinking in the last, several years, what's a good example of public relations that you consider as like, okay, that was stellar, and that was like an example for every PR agency and every project in the crypto space that can really look to as an example and benefit from.
Actually, it was recently the Bybit hack. That was really impressive.
Tell us about it.
Um, well, like they got hacked. I forgot the amount, but like it was significant. And then like right away there was a like immediate post acknowledging it like on their like X, but also on their founders X account. And then they're like, well, and to build trust, because like obviously an exchange getting hacked, like then you have this bank run of people like not like pulling funds out, and I think it obviously hurt them and pulled their funds out. But then like then you had the founder like was like, hey, I'm gonna do a live stream. And it wasn't just like a X Spaces like audio, it was like he jumped on and it was like him and a camera at him. And it was very much like, yeah, so much pressure on him, I can imagine. But like he did a really good job. Like either like obviously he was great, but also I'm sure there was like a team behind the scenes helping him and preparing him. And
So
he
that's
was actually
Ben Bybit.
taking questions. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah,
Yeah, Ben from Bybit. Yeah, and like I thought that was very impressive. I was like, wow, that was like the fast turn. And also it was like only in crypto can that happen. Like I'm
yeah,
sure that happened. Maybe not only like, but this was like live, and it was like, hey, and he was like taking questions directly from X.
yeah. I thought that was really impressive too, and which speaks to kind of like I don't know how famous or how well known Ben was prior to the hack. Probably not very not well known, but post hack, he's like, just he's built so much personal equity in his brand, personal brand that um, now people like listen to him, right?
But
And
it's
so,
trust at the end of the day
yeah,
as well. So it's like you also need, so I've been pushing kind of like founder mode comp, like why there's a need for founders to still be like the front face, or rather like have communications from their company, because at the end of the day, an exchange getting hacked, what do people care about? Like, can they trust this exchange again with their money? And so if you
mhm,
put like a figure in this person, like, you know, people like to trust people. People like to look at people. So it's like, okay, it's actually just that reassurance, like, wow, there's a human being like behind all of
yeah,
this that's responsible and accountable and like telling and reassuring customers that he is going to do what he can to secure the funds or like save your money. It's a very human thing. We want
yeah.
people behind
Well,
organizations.
let's break down the elements. So the hack happened, like, and then let's break down exactly the elements of the things that Ben and Bybit did that kind of turned this sentiment around. Like, if you were to break it all down, what are those things?
Well, uh it was like the immediate kind of comms. So it was like, we have acknowledged this is happening, we're looking into it. It was the getting on the live stream and like not just audio. It's literally camera shining at him, he's looking at the camera, and it's actually addressing questions like live, and being available for questions. And I think that built trust because in the moment when you see all these funds kind of leave and like people like some probably lost millions, like you kind of want like to see someone
Yeah.
be accountable. So I really think the main crux of it was like just putting a camera on the founder and going, look, we're gonna deal with. I mean, I think Coinbase also. I mean, the recent because I feel like Brian does a great job of going direct. Like you'll hear from Brian whenever there's anything like major or serious with Coinbase. So there was that recent like hack of or threat of a hack of data, and like you had the founder directly addressing the people who were trying to like threaten
Yeah.
Coinbase. It's kind of at the end of the day, it's like having a human being actually builds trust because if they didn't like have that, then like people were like, why should I trust Coinbase?
Going to the Brian Armstrong at Coinbase, the video he created, one thing I found really interesting is the angle of the camera. I don't know if that makes a difference from a PR perspective, but I noticed it right away. Like he's speaking, like he's almost higher than the camera and he's looking down. What do you think about that? Or am I imagining things?
I mean I'm not like analyzed that way, but you might be like onto something. Like really, people read into everything, right? Like so the way something's done, like the way that like it wasn't actually framed, it wasn't like polished. It was very much like he literally had his iPhone and he was just talking to the camera. I think that's what it came across to me. Um,
Yeah.
and that also like comes across as like that's quite raw, that's quite genuine and like honest, and again builds trust.
Yeah.
Because if it was polished, it was formal, like I don't know, maybe people would have read something else into it, and it's like I mean
No, I
either
think
way, I
there's
think it could have worked, but still, it's very much like I'm gonna react to this now because it's yeah. If you waited a while to like make sure he gets in front of a good camera, but then at the end of the day, I also would say like Bybit, uh, Ben on live stream was actually quite well framed and like, but it looked like he was like in their office in like a on like an audio visual screen. So like the quality was really good. That's what I was trying to say.
yeah, but it still
Um,
had that it was timely, it
it was
was
timely.
yeah, and it was and even though it was polished, it was still it just felt authentic.
It was so I mean, it
Yeah,
was like timely. I think timeliness is the thing. It was like
is key.
you could not
Well,
have framed that. Yeah.
Samantha Yap, thanks for taking the time to meet with us. You are a legend, and we have so much to learn from you. And best of luck with everything you have going on this year. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. This was a really enjoyable chat.
Cheers.
Great.